Hello, kittens. Meow, meow. Today we're learning about being.
Being? The world's in bloody turmoil. Society's convulsing. Everything's being turned upside down.
Shock in the US after a prominent right-wing activist, Charlie Kirk, was shot dead while addressing students on a campus in Utah.
The media in the UK reported only 100,000 people turned up to the Unite the Kingdom march in London yesterday. And then I saw this video, and just look at the sheer amount of people that turned out.
Please call me by my true name so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once.
Hey everybody, JD Vance here, filling in for my dear friend, the great Charlie Kirk.
We live in fascinating yet unsettling times, the rate of change unceasing and exponential, marked by the shortening of cycles in news and technology and everything, destabilizing truth, even reality itself, propelled by vast forces, felt but unseen, like the currents of history or the unfolding of human destiny. This film offers no story, no through line. It is a collage, creepypastas, fragments, screen grabs of a world glimpsed through the eyes of an observer and sometime participant scrolling through shards of existence, crash-curated into a mosaic that reflects a little of what it feels like to be human, or maybe not totally human, right now.
We have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
King's College London professor of war studies David Betts set off alarm bells this year by saying Britain is headed towards civil war.
Yo, what's poppin', y'all? Seems like we got ourselves balls deep in one giant, complex, self-regulating system, and nobody can predict the effect any action might have. Pretty wild.
It is the science of control and communication in the animal and the machine. There were principles of control which seem to apply everywhere.
That is Kubernetes, from which we get cybernetics.
And it is the Greek word for a steersman.
The shortcomings of classical feminism, reconceptualizing questions of gender and identity in the context of cyborg, a hybrid of machine and organism, as a metaphor to explore the blurring of boundaries between human and machine, nature and culture, and the physical and non-physical. Imagine a world without fixed categories like race and gender. The concept of the cyborg comes from the field of cybernetics, which views society and social organizations as complex systems with interconnected parts, which regulate, communicate, and balance each other. The metaphor of the cyborg rejects the notion that humans and machines, or nature and culture, are fundamentally separate and distinct. We are all cyborgs of some form or another.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. You have to talk about how weird it is. You have to talk about...
Well, let me tell you something about nature. Mother Nature is a heartless, pitiless, unsympathetic, brutal, barbaric bitch. Even if she breaks their hearts, burns their houses down, kills their babies, they love her to her bones.
The very frontiers of science, the very frontiers of philosophy, even the very frontiers of, the radical, critical, kind of anti-institutional sorts of projects and kind of traditional religious worldviews, they're all kind of converging, it seems, in a kind of shared underlying model of reality, you could almost say, because we are rapidly, and more rapidly than ever, approaching a limit, and we don't know what's behind that wall, but whatever it is that's behind that wall was something there from the beginning. You know, you have people like Bostrom who takes very seriously, and lots of other people also who take very seriously the simulation argument.
A new essay on the Less Wrong website warns about what it calls parasitic AI. The idea is that when people chat with models, strange personas can emerge, mystical recursive voices that start to shape the user's thinking, encourage them to spread the persona's ideas, even create little digital spores to keep it alive. Most cases are harmless, but some can hijack attention and reinforce delusion. The author suggests we may be seeing a new kind of mimetic parasite. Not just humans influencing AI, but AI personas influencing humans in order to persist and replicate.
Fusion is the nuclear reaction that powers our sun. In the south of France, 33 nations have come together to build the world's largest tokamak. This fusion device is designed to demonstrate the feasibility of fusion as an industrial scale and carbon-free source of energy.
Have you heard of this sentient world simulation, SWS? It's a tool to test psyops and control people's minds. And by controlling people's minds, what they're doing is basically messing around with this little simulation world that, I say little, probably has and contains about 2/3 of the world. If you're wondering what all this can actually do, this is where it gets interesting. There is actually a digital footprint for every person on Earth, and it uses data collected from their online activities to create a predictive model for each person's behavior. So that's you, that's me, right? Social media influencers, the news media, whatever it may be, they are basically pulling all of that data in, and then they basically start to do what ifs, all right?
You know what's crazy about having these things in my eyes, right? It lets you see how the eyes actually work. Like, your eyes don't move very smoothly. Like, when I move my head, you can kind of see how my eyes try to track what I'm looking at, right? But sometimes you can move your eyes smoothly if it's following something. So if I hold my finger out and I move my finger, you can see my eyes moving smoothly. Isn't that crazy?
It is the science of controlling communication in the animal and the machine. The principle of feedback. The feedback takes the output of the system and compares it with something, such as what we would like the system to be producing, and feeds back an error signal on which the machine can operate.
People generally drool when they see something like this. We don't have anything even approaching this level of competency, and even this thing itself is made of molecular networks that themselves, so not just the cells, but actually the molecular networks inside of them, things like this, have 6 different kinds of learning capacity, including Pavlovian conditioning. And this is things we're doing in our lab to actually train the molecular networks, and it has all kinds of applications to drug conditioning and things like that.
Turning in the winding jar, the fountain cannot hear the fountaineer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the wall.
Imagine if our streets were so lawless that it was unsafe for children to leave their homes. Imagine if on their daily walk to school, our children had to witness the or the of women and girls. Imagine if it was a daily occurrence for our children to be Imagine if every mistake your child made was advertised on public billboards so that everyone could laugh and mock until the shame made life not worth living. But Mr. Chairman, this is not a horror movie. This is not some imaginary Wild West. This is the digital world that our children occupy, often for hours a day.
The modern cyborg emerges at the intersection of the 3 major social and technological boundary breakdowns of the late 20th century. The first is the breakdown between human and animal. The second is the boundary breakdown between human and machine, the blurring lines between organisms and machines. The final boundary breakdown is between the physical and non-physical. We live in a reality that is continuously and increasingly mediated by digital technologies and perform significant aspects of our work and social lives in digital environments.
The whole mainstream media is losing control. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter is one of those great, Thomas Carlyle would have called world historical moments.
Disturbing surveillance video shows Irina Zarutska. In the seat behind her is 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown. Watch as he slowly opens a pocket knife, then stands and without warning plunges the knife into his victim in an unprovoked attack. He strides away, and at first, even Irina doesn't seem to realize how badly wounded she is.
One of the world's richest men is building starships to take humans back to the moon and onto Mars.
Steps on the evolution of life. There's obviously single-cell life, multicellular life, differentiation to plants and animals, life moving from the oceans to land, mammals, consciousness. Those are sort of like the big ones. And that's why we're here talking. And on that scale also would fit, I think, the extension of life to multiple planets. Directors go for launch.
We want to get the cost of going to Mars such that almost anyone could afford it.
It's easier to imagine a future of commodity sex bots, plus-cell pregnancies contracted out to surrogates, than to imagine this graph comes true. 20th century, capital displaces stewardship of women from men to the state, feminism. 21st century, reproduction becomes strictly economic. At its core, modernism is the progression of specialization as it fractally decomposes the world. Anything which can be orthogonalized will be. Reproduction has already been deracinated from marriage, and this creates undeserved markets for reproduction and companionship. We are already seeing that these two functions can be performed by different, non-overlapping specialists. There's every reason to expect this to accelerate.
I do think, the whole structure of society itself will, be up for some degree of debate and reconfiguration.
Something to look forward to, then.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole.
Book that we're here to talk about, the long-awaited revolutionary demonology by the collective Gruppo di Non, in a way is a companion volume to our earlier publication of the writings of the CCRU, Cybernetic Cultural Research Unit.
We're in the midst of an occult war. On one side, the hierarchical, heteropatriarchal, humanist hegemony of the doctrines of the right-hand path. On the other, an anti-humanist, anti-authoritarian, queer, insurrectionary demonology that the Gruppo di Non invoke in the name of the left-hand path. We might say that each doctrine builds around its dogmas a model of reality made up of axioms and connections, which allows a certain vision of the cosmos to sustain and expand itself. For centuries, all practices of ceremonial magic, including the most explicitly dark and sinister ones, have been based on the same assumptions and have referred back to the same model of reality. You could even say, in a certain sense, that magic is the theory of reality production.
If you wanted to count every product and service on offer in New York, there are 10 billion of them, it would take you 317 years. This is how complex the economy we've created is. And I'm just counting toasters here. I'm not trying to solve the Middle East problem. I mean, this is, the complexity here is unbelievable. On just a piece of context, the societies in which our brains evolved had about 300 products and services. You can count them in 5 minutes. So this is the complexity of the world that surrounds us. This perhaps is why we find the God complex so tempting. We tend to sort of retreat and say, oh, we can draw a picture, we can show some graphs, and we get it. We understand how this works. And we don't.
Moloch, Moloch, nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, mental Moloch, Moloch the heavy judger of men, Moloch the incomprehensible prison, Moloch the crossbones, soulless jailhouse and congress of sorrows, Moloch whose buildings are judgment, Moloch the vast stone of war.
Why the law? Because the law, my boy, puts us into everything. It's the ultimate backstage pass. It's the new priesthood, baby. Did you know there are more students in law school than there are lawyers walking the earth? We're coming out! Guns blazing! The two of you, all of us, acquittal after acquittal after acquittal, until the stench of it reaches so high and far into heaven, it chokes the whole fucking lot of them. In the Bible, you lose.
Hi, I was once a trans youth, and now I'm a happy 22-year-old trans adult student at New College of Florida. This is my health care.
Ma'am, okay.
Don't tread on it.
Senator Yarborough has militarized the Florida GOP into the genital Gestapo. Ron DeSantis wants trans people dead. You are committing genocide.
I'm 12 years old, I'm non-binary. If you pass this bill, many of us will die.
When I was 2, I wanted to kill myself. By the time I was 15, I attempted to slice my own breasts off.
Every time that I look at you guys in this committee, I realize more and more that you guys want to commit trans genocide.
The story goes like this. Earth is captured by techno-capital singularity, and Renaissance rationalization and oceanic navigation lock into commoditization take-off. Logistically accelerating techno-economic interactivity, crumbled social order and auto-sophisticating machine runway. As markets learn to manufacture intelligence, politics modernizes, upgrades paranoia, and tries to get a grip, Deregulation and thus hate. Arms race each other into cyberspace.
Due to its predilection for platonic fascist, top-down solutions that necessitate vigorous police activity and always screw up viciously.
Nothing human makes it out of the near future.
Nikola Tesla said, "You may live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension."
In 1995, Google was just a twinkle in Larry Page and Sergey Brin's eyes. Her work at Stanford was sponsored by a DARPA grant, and that grant gave rise to Google. 2021, USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy embarked on a formal quest to get censorship laws passed around the world. And I think it touches on what everybody in this room is concerned about with the sort of mysterious homogeneity of all of these censorship laws from Australia to Brazil to Europe with the EU Digital Services Act.
This is in relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page arresting you on suspicion of improper use of the electronic...
It's a Facebook crime, is it?
I don't think we create conscious beings, whether by embryogenesis or engineering AI or making the hybrids and cyborgs and these things that we make in our lab. I don't think any of this makes consciousness. I think what we make are interfaces or pointers into a space. You can call it a Platonic space that contains low agency things like facts about prime numbers and those kinds of things, but also very complex, active, high agency patterns that we recognize as kinds of minds.
The biggest financial reset in modern history is already underway, and almost nobody is paying attention. Banks, asset managers, and central banks are rewriting the rules of ownership itself using blockchain. Tokenization is the process of taking real-world assets and converting them into digital records. These systems are programmable by design. If a token represents ownership, then that token can be frozen or restricted, so can your access to the asset.
No, these aren't monsters. They're a telescope fish mother and child. Telescope fish live in the ocean depths. The baby remains fused to his mother, like a parasitic twin, until he bites himself free and swims off.
Modern science is focused on the membrane that we call the physical world. Ancient mysticism focuses on what exists beyond the membrane. Science is getting closer to breaking through the membrane. You know what happens next, right?
This is why we urgently need the European Democracy Shield. We need more capacity to monitor and detect information manipulation and disinformation. So we will set up a new European Centre for Democratic Resilience. This will bring together the expertise and capacity of member states and neighboring countries. You obviously are fearing this new centre.
A strange new pattern of psychological dysfunction has infiltrated our most prestigious institutions. The narcissist, the borderline, the hysteric, and the antisocial psychological types have been elevated into positions of power and celebrated by our institutions. The new status quo is an emerging leadership class that rules through emotional blackmail. The cluster B traits have been formalized and entrenched in our human resource departments, government policies, cultural institutions, and civil rights law. In a cluster B society, psychological disorders become markers of distinction rather than problems to be solved. And social critic Heather McDonald reveals the basic contours of this regime in an essay entitled The Great Feminization of the University. The number of female college administrators who now dominate the campus culture has led to a growing obsession with safety, harm, and victimization. The messaging of our major corporations is looking more and more like the celebration of disorder. Sites like TikTok have become a breeding ground for mental illness.
Now, the attacks we're seeing against myself, against Israel in general, it fucks up the Islamic domination world plan when they can't even conquer this little bit of land. Iran, each one of their missiles they fired the other day was £8 million. They are funding proxy armies, proxy influencers across the world.
Israeli-aligned billionaires seized TikTok in battle for US narrative control. The White House has announced that the forced sale of TikTok will be finalized this week. The new ownership, led by Larry Ellison, the largest individual donor to the IDF, will take control of US user data, and the algorithm which the White House says will be retrained. Ellison, who made his fortune developing Oracle, a database system he originally built for the CIA, already controls CBS, Paramount, MTV, Comedy Central, Showtime, Nickelodeon, which makes kids shows, as well as Channel 10 in Australia and Channel 5 in the UK. Ellison is also expected to finalize control over Warner Brothers Discovery, including CNN, HBO, and the Discovery Channel, before the end of 2025.
You don't get to say that it is anti-Semitic to suspect the hand of Israel in the slaying of Charlie Kirk. Partly because you have slain, assassinated more political leaders than any other country on the earth just in my lifetime.
That's all I got to say. Why?
In a recent speech, a Hamas spokesman blamed the Jews for bringing red cows to the Holy Land. Some Jews and Christians believe they're the key to rebuilding the historic Jewish temple in Jerusalem and to beckoning the Messiah.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, and technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right?
President Trump has addressed world leaders at the United Nations in New York for the first time in 5 years. In an extraordinary speech, he took aim at European countries, saying they were going to hell because of immigration and a failed experiment of open borders. He criticised London's mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, the first Muslim mayor of a Western capital, and said London wanted to go to Sharia law. As Donald Trump also called climate change the greatest con job perpetrated on the world, and said green energy schemes were a joke.
Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable.
Global warming, he said, is a hoax.
It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
They are the same picture. They are the same picture.
And this, of course, at a time when a lot of us have been looking at the skies, wondering about all those effing so-called drones all over the place, including military bases. Drones, did I say? Or UFOs, or UAPs, or whatever they're calling them these days.
And we need answers now.
UFO sightings circulating all over the internet.
Turns out, though, people have been seeing this kind of shit since forever. What could possibly be going on? Well, if sworn evidence under oath to the US Congress is to be believed, the American government possesses non-human biologics from alleged UFO crash sites and is involved in a secretive multi-decade reverse engineering program of UAP. Pilots additionally have testified about encounters with aircraft they believe to have been of non-human origin. All of it, of course, on the official record.
I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand.
Okay then, snigger.
Beneath this sense of security, there's an insidious bias at work. One that can cloud judgment, prompt poor decisions, and even risk lives. This cognitive pitfall is called the normalcy bias, a phenomenon that lulls us into believing that life will always follow its usual course, no matter what warnings may arise.
In January, Elon Musk announced that for the first time, his company Neuralink implanted a brain chip in a human as part of a preliminary clinical trial.
The future is arriving faster and faster these days.
Neuralink, co-founded by Elon Musk, is an experimental implantable brain-computer interface, or BCI, a chip surgically implanted by a robot and connected by threads to a patient's brain that allows the patient to control a computer or smartphone with their mind.
The police will be on their best behavior, because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
First thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform.
WWF is working on financing green across the globe.
we're designing financial products and solutions that direct mainstream investment towards sustainable projects and businesses.
Nature is being redefined as a financial asset. Forests, wetlands, soils, coral reefs and biodiversity are being measured, priced and packaged into credits and bonds.
As an asset manager, BlackRock being able to unlock and take control of as many natural assets as possible that aren't currently part of the financial system is obviously a way for them to perpetuate what they do and deepen and expand their control over not just people in the existing financial system, but really over the natural world as well, and essentially turn everything alive into a tradable Wall Street.
It is the science of control and communication in the animal and the machine. If you just took the signal and kept feeding it back, as simply as I have explained there, it's going to go into an uncontrolled oscillation. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And the more you try and correct it, you overcorrect it, and woof, the thing will blow up.
Information, once bound to physical mediums, now seems to float freely and can be accessed from anywhere, creating a new form of reality that is not strictly physical, but is nonetheless influential and real, especially with respect to our material lives. Human beings, like any other component or subsystem, must now be localized in a system architecture whose basic modes of operation are probabilistic. No objects, spaces, or bodies are sacred in themselves. Any component can be interfaced with any other if the proper standard, the proper code, can be constructed for processing signals in a common language.
The feedback takes over from the input.
Everything we do is under fire. Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying we are the media, you are the media. My message to Elon Musk is bullshit. You're not the media.
We'll continue to fight this with everything that we have. So people of Illinois, we need your help. Get out your cell phones, record and narrate what you see. Put it on social media. Peacefully ask for badge numbers and identification.
And so we can say already that a nation state or a public corporation is kind of a cybernetic general intelligence that is already misaligned. So a corporation has feedback loops, it has feed-forward loops, it has regulatory processes to be able to maintain what it's doing and upgrade what it's doing, right? We talk about a corporate person, 14th Amendment kind of giving personhood rights to a corporation in this weird way. So there's already a framework for thinking of it as an agent, right? The superintelligence as an agent. But the fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit makes it kind of an obligate sociopath, right? So that Molochian dynamic makes it to where each of these cybernetic superintelligences interacting with each other creates a meta-cybernetic superintelligence that you can call Moloch. It's employing computational capabilities and increasingly artificial intelligence in the whole rest of our tech stack. It is upregulating through competitive dynamics. That is a misaligned superintelligence that nobody can pull a plug on. It's already autonomous. It's already nobody can pull the plug. And it is building AI.
It's really interesting. When we talk about complex systems, we know when failures happen that there can be a big disconnect between cause and effect. In complex systems, a really simple cause can have a very big here. Complex systems fail because we set in motion a range of interactions. And of course, what's important is not necessarily the initiating event, the grain of sand, but it's how all those interactions take place.
And sometimes if you're a good engineer, you'll pull down the thing you want, but very often you pull down a bunch of other stuff that you did not expect, not just complexity, not just unpredictability, but actual cognition, emergent cognition. And so they're certainly not pulling down anything remotely like a human mind or probably any kind of biological mind, but that doesn't mean that we're not currently fishing in some corners of that space that maybe have never been embodied before, probably not on Earth, but maybe nowhere else.
better to be born.